So essentially, this is what your eyes are doing when they're looking at Freddy's sweater.
Oh, no, she won't hold! She's breaking up!
What's happening, my fellow ghouls and ghoulettes? Welcome to a brand new episode of Cosplay Chris. Now, Halloween may be over, but it's Halloween all year round on this channel. You know I love doing my horror content. It doesn't help that I was away for the last week of Halloween. So this is essentially playing a bit of catch up, but today I want to talk about something that has always fascinated me for the longest time. As long as I've been a Freddy Krueger fan, the idea and the design of Freddy Krueger has always fascinated me. So today, I'm going to be talking about how Wes Craven designed the look of Frederick Charles Krueger. Compared to Michael, Jason, Leatherface, in my humble opinion, I think Freddy has the coolest aesthetic going for him and a personality to match. And when I tell people the story of how Freddy was designed, they're like, oh wow, cool story bro, you should do a video on that. Not really, but people actually get fascinated by it, especially people who aren't in the know with the Nightmare on Elm Street and aren't big fans, but just know Freddy at face and name value. But when you delve into the behind the scenes, it's really interesting and makes for a great story. Now at the end of this video, I'm gonna be showing you guys something very cool, a very rare audio track of Robert Englund doing his ADR looping for the first A Nightmare on Elm Street. And they're essentially also experimenting with the voice and the modulation of the voice. There are some echoes at some point, and it's so cool to hear. It's a very rough and raw clip. It took me forever to find. I remember seeing it many, many years ago, and then it just got buried in obscurity. But I finally found it, and I'm so proud and so happy to include it in this video. All right, let's waste no time. Let's get started. Now, with every great killer, there's a great name. So in the case of this video, we're gonna be centering around Fred Krueger from the first Nightmare on Elm Street. Even though he's called Freddy a couple of times in the film, the main premise for the name was Fred Krueger. Fred was the name of a child that apparently bullied Wes Craven when he was in elementary school, and there's just something just so kind of comical about it in a way. Fred, Freddy. You wouldn't pick that for a killer, but I think that's the best part. Now the name Krueger, it sounds very German-esque. That is actually derived from the name Krug, a character that is in another Wes Craven film, The Last House on the Left, and Krug is a bad bastard in that film. So essentially Craven just extended it. And then we have Fred Krueger. So a little bonus thing to go along with the name, the characterization of Freddy, the tauntfulness, the teasingness, the essential foreplay before the kill is based off an old drunk that was wandering down the street and spotted a young Wes Craven looking out the window, and he then taunted Wes and his brother. He eventually came up into their apartment building and right up to their door and looking through the peephole, scaring the absolute shit out of Craven and his brother, and from that point on, he had always had that locked away in his subconscious. Now, not only does a killer's name have to be on point, so does their attire. In the case of Michael Myers, we have coveralls, Leatherface, we have an apron. Jason, we have a button-up shirt and a pair of slacks. But in the case of Wes Craven designing his dream stalker for his film A Nightmare on Elm Street, he wanted something that stood out from a crowd. So in the case of the boots and the pants, it's pretty straightforward, but it works so well with the sweater. Essentially, Freddy was supposedly a worker, a caretaker at a factory, a boilermaker, and it's essentially kind of just the uniform of a boilermaker, a janitor, a caretaker, something like that. Just some black boots, black pants. The general consensus is that Robert favored Dickies brand work boots and pants. To find vintage ones is so hard these days, especially those boots. Like, you barely see the boots in the film. But really the piece de resistance is the sweater. Anyone that isn't really a big fan of Freddy will just assume he's wearing a Christmas sweater. But in the case of Craven, he did his research and he found an article in Scientifica America where essentially red and green are the two hardest colors for the human eye to process side by side. Red and green are called opponent colors because people normally cannot see redness and greenness simultaneously in a single color. Now the same can also be said for yellow and blue, but researchers have long regarded color opponency to be hardwired into the brain, completely forbidding perception of reddish green or yellowish blue. So essentially this is what your eyes are doing when they're looking at Freddy's sweater.
Oh, no, she won't hold! She's breaking up!
Now I think the biggest trademark design of the original Part 1 sweater, there are no green stripes on the sleeves, and I love that design. I honestly have no idea why they went ahead with part 2 and added the green stripes onto the sleeves. No one's ever spoken about it in terms of the cast, the crew, the costume designers. Jack Sholder, who directed the second Nightmare on Elm Street, said, and I quote, he felt no compunction to follow the template of the original Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't know if that applies to the design of the sweater. I, for one, adore the design of the Part 1 sweater. Now, originally Craven didn't want sleeves at all. He wanted Freddy's arms exposed, as you can see in this test shot right here of Robert's scrawny little pasty arms there. But David Miller, the wonderful makeup artist who did Robert's prosthetics for the film, said it's going to be way too expensive and it's going to take way too long, because not only do I have to do Robert's head makeup, but I also have to cover his arms fully in prosthetics. It's going to take too long and we don't have the budget for it. So he was covered up with solid red sleeves. Now you'll notice I'm comparing Freddy to the other slashers a lot. What sets him apart? He has a personality. He's able to move his face. He's not a mute and he's not wearing a mask. As Wes Craven said, he wears a mask of scarred tissue as a result of being burned alive by the parents of the children that he killed. David Miller, who had just come off Michael Jackson's Thriller, was hired to design, make and apply the makeup to Robert Englund. And one night when he was trying to figure out the design of Freddy's makeup, he was out one night, he was eating a pepperoni pizza. The more he looked at the pizza, he thought, hang on, there's something here. There's something I can do with this design, the way the cheese mangles and wraps around the pepperoni pieces. So with that, he boxed up the pizza, took it back to his garage where his workshop was, and then started sculpting the appliances. And if you look at the makeup from part 1, it is very derivative of a pepperoni pizza. Now, what is brilliant about David Miller's makeup design, it's multi-layered. First, David would lay down a muscle layer and then the flesh layer on top. Now, unfortunately, you don't see the beauty of that detail enough in the film because it's a very dimly lit film, but that's what they were aiming for and I love it. I love Freddy being hidden in darkness in the first Elm Street. But apparently by having those two separate layers, you could see the muscle moving separate to the outer layer of skin. Now, much like the sleeveless look with the open burnt arms, Wes Craven suggested maybe to have some exposed teeth. David Miller said it's just going to look too phony, too cheesy to glue teeth onto the side. But then we fast forward to 2010 with the remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street, and we have Jackie Earle Haley as Freddy Krueger, but they've got the green screen appliances there and they digitally add the exposed teeth in later on. If they had the tech back then, go for it, but other than that, if you're going to paste teeth on and you don't have that depth, that hollowness, it's just not going to work. Now, apparently when Robert tried the makeup on for the first time, he was petrified to move because David Miller had put all this work into the makeup. He was terrified to smile, to blink, to raise his eyebrows, anything in case it all fell off. And essentially David Miller's like, dude, go nuts, it's foam latex, it'll stretch, you'll be fine. And with that, Robert just got this big glee in his face and then just started practicing, doing facial expressions and whatnot. A small little detail that no one notices, Freddy actually has hair. If you look at some behind the scenes shots, there are little wisps of leftover strands of hair on the back of his head. You don't see them in the film. There are some behind the scenes shots where there is a makeup artist kind of tinkering with Robert's makeup and you see the silhouette of little wisps of hair, but this particular shot here of Robert looking back to the camera, you see that grey long hair. Very reminiscent of Michael Myers' look, James Hugh Courtney from Halloween Ends. Pretty cool, I dig that little detail. Also, if you guys notice, Robert doesn't wear any appliances on his left ungloved hand. They've essentially just sooted it up. David Miller did sculpt a separate hand appliance, as you can see right here in this beautiful little Polaroid from his workshop. They just opted not to go with it. It would just save on time, but instead just dirty and grease his hands up. Now, one thing I love about Freddy is his silhouette, and part of that is because of that beautiful fedora. The brand of fedora that they supposedly use was the designer collection Godfather fedora, as you see right here. It's an absolute rarity to find one these days, but I love the silhouette it casts. But the fedora was almost scrapped in favor of a paperboy hat, as you can see right here. Apparently Robert was dismayed and fought hard for the fedora. He felt that Wes was getting cold feet with the fedora. He didn't want it to look silly and whatnot. And Robert essentially said, no, trust your gut. Let's go with it on this. It's got to be the fedora. And because Robert persuaded Wes to do so, we got the trademark fedora. Now, when Wes was designing Freddy, we were at an age where slashers, killers were using butcher's knives, chainsaws, machetes, but Wes wanted a weapon that would stand out like the rest of his beautiful creation of Fred Krueger. So he thought back to old school caveman times, prehistoric times. What would cavemen run from? Bears, saber-toothed tigers, and what did they have? Those big paws, those talons. The idea of a saber-toothed tiger coming around the corner of a cave, scraping its nails. So Wes thought, if this is going to be a child killer, he must have scrapped something together. Some sort of intricate and beautifully engineered weapon that is his, that he has created in the bowels of the boiler room. With that, he approached mechanical engineer of the film, Jim Doyle, who drew up these beautiful blueprints, and the work was then handed off to Lou Carlucci and Charlie Blodinelli to build the glove. It was mounted on either a Wells Lamont or a Stanley leatherwork glove with a ball and tape closure, a brass back plate. We have Type M copper pipe finger stalls, and adorned upon them are 4 Case XX P210 tomato knives that have had their handles removed and turned upside down. All riveted together to make this beautiful specimen that you see right here. So this is my Part 1 glove from the very talented Tony Gill. I'm very honored to have something like this. It is a perfect representation of how the Part 1 glove looked during production of the first Elm Street. And honestly, it's such a cool and unique weapon compared to what other slashers were wielding at the time. It's definitely a winner. So now that Craven had designed his character, he's written the script, production was in full swing, it was time to cast his dream stalker. And at first he wanted to cast a stuntman, someone who could physically endure some of the stunts, especially when Nancy is inflicting her Home Alone S-traps upon Fred. He then shifted to hiring possibly an older man, but the more he interviewed older men, apparently according to Craven, they'd seen so much of life, they just had this innocence about them and couldn't go to that dark, seedy place to uncover the character of Fred Krueger. Now, at one point, actor David Warner was cast as Freddy, but due to scheduling conflicts with another project, he had to pull out. In comes happy-go-lucky 36-year-old Robert Englund. Robert Englund was a classically trained thespian actor. He came in, he put some dark rings under his eyes from his buddy's ashtray in the car. Apparently he just sat down and played a staring game with Wes Craven, and he got the part. And essentially Wes Craven was like, what am I thinking? We're covering him makeup. It doesn't matter how old he was. I still can't get my head around it. I'm 34 next month. In 2 years' time, I'll be the same age Robert was when he was cast as Freddy. What am I doing with my life? And last but not least, and this is the part I'm so excited about and so excited to show you guys, finding the voice. With Robert Englund's normal speaking voice, it's very upbeat, happy-go-lucky, and I can only imagine how much more upbeat and happy-go-lucky it was back when he was 36 years old. But you need a voice that's intimidating, commanding, and demonic almost. So what I'm about to show you guys is a 2-minute piece of audio footage of Robert doing his ADR recordings and the sound mixers essentially experimenting with his voice, with the manipulations and then adding echoes in, and you can just hear the passion in Robert's voice. You can hear the heavy breathing. You hear him practicing with "This is God," "Tina, watch this," "Now you die." I had to search high and low for this. Some people may have had this saved for ages or could easily access it. I saw it many moons ago, lost it, and I finally found it. And I just think it's so cool to hear ghouls and ghoulies. So with that being said, enjoy this little 2-minute audio clip of Robert Englund finding the character of Freddy along with the wonderful sound mixes of A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Katja, Nightmare. Fred for reverb.
Tina. This is God. Tina. Watch this. And now you die. You what? get you.
Fred Miscellaneous.
No. This is God. One, two. Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4. Better lock your door. 5, 6. Get your crucifix. 7, 8. Gonna stay up late. 9, 10. Never sleep again.
How dope was that? And there we have it, ghouls and ghoulettes. That is how Wes Craven designed one of his most famous characters, Fred Krueger, from the first A Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, in my humble opinion, the first Freddy will always be my favorite Freddy. I know some people love part 2, part 3. Some people even love part 6. I love part 6, but it's definitely not my number one. Number one is my number one. Guys, wherever you are in the world, please have yourselves an absolute cracker of a day. I hope you're well, hope you're happy, be merry, be silly. And until next time, ghouls and ghoulettes, please always remember, cosplayers do it best.